Hey YouTube, we're back with the Harbor Freight 2-ton engine hoist, and today I'm going to show you another issue that I've had with this hoist, which is that I left it out in the rain, unfortunately. I was living up in an area near the ocean, and there's a little bit of rain, a lot of moisture in the air, and I ended up corroding and rusting, at least surface rusting, the piston on this hydraulic hoist. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the tips and tricks that I'm going to use to at least reduce some of that rust and try to prevent any deep pitting that'll happen in the future. Hope you enjoy. So in removing this rust, we want to be as gentle as possible. It still is going to take a good bit of elbow grease. It's just the way it is. We don't want to use power tools, particularly any wire brushes, as you can cause more pitting on the surface just due to the wire brush impacting it. In addition to that, as we begin removing this rust, we want it to go somewhere. We don't want it to just dry flake and fall down into the crevice right around our cylinder piston. So we're going to want to use a WD-40, or I'm just going to use some regular engine oil to help remove some of this rust. In addition to that, I'm going to be using some steel wool. Now the steel wool is going to be a lot smoother than a traditional steel brush, and the reason for that is the grains of the wool are going to be running, instead of running perpendicular like a brush, they're going to be running parallel to the surface as we remove it. So when we scrub back and forth, instead of scraping the surface, we are genuinely going to be brushing the surface and pushing it off. So here we go. Now, I'm using an up and down motion on this, primarily just because it's easy, but you could certainly do a back and forth motion like this. Just be careful, as the steel wool will tear. So you have to do it relatively gently. In order to apply more pressure, I take my thumb along with my forefingers and I compress it and push firmly as I stroke this. Get your minds out of the gutter. And this is where we're going to use paper towels just to try to clean up some of this rusty oil that's left everywhere. Now I'm going to use a little bit of WD-40. It just penetrates a little bit better. A little bit lower viscosity. Another tip, if you decide that you don't want to be using multiple steel wools, take the same steel wool, wrap it in a cloth, and squeeze it like you would a sponge or a wet rag, just to try to get some of the old rust out of it before you go in for another coat. You don't want to be constantly pouring the rust on here. It's going to flow. And as you can see, we've obviously cleaned all the surface rust off, and any of the really dark spots are some potential pits. Now, as long as we keep this somewhat oiled, which the hydraulics will do relatively well on their own, I don't see an issue with allowing this to stay. Now, fortunately in my case, after cleaning up the rust, I was able to confirm that it was primarily surface rust. That just means that there was a coating over the surface of oxidation from the steel. However, there was very, very minimal pitting. Now, if you see on the edge here, there's a little bit of a speckling of dark spots. That's what I'm talking about when I say there's pitting. Pitting is gouging that happens where salt tends to create a small cavern in the surface of the steel. Now, if you get too deep of these pits, or if you've got too many of them, eventually, as this moves up and down, it's going to act like a file, and it's going to start removing material from the O-ring. And as you wear out that O-ring, you're going to notice that you're leaking hydraulic fluid. If you're already leaking hydraulic fluid from the top of the piston here, you're probably out of luck. You can certainly try cleaning this off, as a smooth surface with pits is a lot easier on O-rings than a rusted surface with pits. However, you're going to have to go ahead and tear apart this hydraulic cylinder and replace the O-rings inside. I have found some kits available to do this, and I've heard that there's been some good success with that. So if you give that a try and you've cleaned the piston, you'll have a good chance of being able to use it for a few years. However, expect to be replacing that, as you don't want to have an engine dropping on you in the middle of the job. That's not safe, not a good idea. I'd probably recommend at the price point to just go ahead and replace at least the hydraulics in the system. If not, just go ahead and buy a new one. You can get them at Harbor Freight, use a 20% off coupon, get it while it's on sale. This isn't an incredibly expensive unit, so be safe about it. This is primarily just an aspect where if you don't like the sight of it and you want to make sure this is going to be lasting for years to come, clean this up, use this strategy, and it'll definitely help extend the life of your hoist. Hopefully some of you guys find this useful. Let me know if there's any other videos that you'd like to see. I'd be glad to post up some more videos on the work that I'm going to be doing on this, as well as some other things around the shop. So thank you so much for watching, and good luck with your project.